Welcome back to a new episode of Inside Marketing Design. I'm Charlie, I'm the marketing design lead at ConvertKit, and I started this series to get on calls with my fellow marketing designers in the tech industry and talk about how they do their work and what they love about their jobs. This week, we're taking a look inside marketing design at Doist. Doist is a company that makes productivity apps. They make Todoist, which is an app to keep track of your tasks, projects, goals, and also Twist, which is a team communication tool. They are a fully remote company with about 75-ish employees all over the world. And I got the chance to chat today to their two marketing designers, Stephen and Anais. Both of these designers actually started at Doist around the same time in January this year, 2020. Stephen has a background doing freelance work for nonprofits. He's also worked before at a marketing agency on an in-house design team there before shifting over and working in-house in a tech company. Anais has worked in an agency before as well, in a design studio. She's also done corporate in-house work as well as marketing design at other tech companies too. So both of these designers bring quite a range of experience to their roles. And in this conversation, it was really interesting to talk about the differences they've found between working in-house at a tech company versus being in a more agency situation. We also touched on the fact that because Doist has these two different apps with two different brands, and then there's also the brand of Doist, the company itself, what that's like for them as an in-house marketing design team and how that variation in their work goes. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode and take a look inside marketing design at Doist. Welcome to Inside Marketing Design, Stephen and Anais. I'm so excited to have you here, our first episode with a dual representation from a design team. This is going to be great. Let's start off by talking a little bit about Doist. Tell me a little bit about the marketing team there and how it's structured. Or actually, you know what? I should phrase that as the marketing design team because I don't actually know where your team fits within the company.
Well, you're actually seeing the whole marketing design team right here.
There we go. Okay, we have the whole marketing design team of Doist on the show. Amazing.
Isn't it? It's Stephen and I are the two marketing designers. And then we have a bigger design team of about 8 people with 3 product designers, 2 illustrators, and our head of design.
And do you sit so marketing design is part of the design team rather than the marketing team?
I would say we definitely fit in between. I wrote we split our allegiance because in a lot of ways we do more work with the marketing team and interact and brainstorm, communicate daily with folks on the marketing team. But in terms of our manager and our team meetings that we do and how we share the progress of work we're doing, we are officially on the design team.
That makes sense. Yeah. Isn't it interesting how when you're remote, those lines do get blurrier, I think. I'm thinking back to my first job as on the marketing design team in tech was at Xero, and we were in a physical office and the marketing design team sat literally alongside the marketing team and the product design team was on a whole different floor from us. But obviously when you're remote, things are a lot blurrier and you can more easily split your allegiance, like you said. Do you tend to collaborate much with the wider design team? You mentioned illustrators being on the rest of the design team. I can assume you need illustration work as part of the, marketing materials as well. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so illustration is really important to our marketing design and our brand in general. I'd say it's probably the most important aspect visually of what creates our emotional appeal through our brand. But the illustrators, they kind of function as a independent team, and we coordinate the work that we're doing with them, but we also have the illustrations going into the product, so they also kind of split their time between us and also the blog that we have as a company.
Yes, they are very busy all the time.
No doubt.
Yeah, but it's all a lot of communication, and when we're working on something we will ask feedback from the product designers and they ask feedback from us on the stuff they're working on.
We actually right now we're working a lot on defining some certain aspects of our brand, and we seek a lot of feedback from the team that way. We always kind of include the whole design team, even if the product team doesn't always care as much what colors we use on the website, because it isn't always relevant to their Todoist app or Twist app.
So it sounds like you two operate, as sort of like a team within a team then. Where does the work come from for you? Who sets your responsibilities and your work?
That really depends on the project. And in general at Doist, we have a very flat organization. So again, it always depends on the projects and the needs. We have a do system. We call it Doist objective, which is pretty much any project that will benefit the products or the company. And those can be generated by pretty much anyone. If you have an idea you want to contribute to the company, or if you want to have a project you need to do for your team, you'll propose a do project. Then you'll work on proposals. So that person could be myself if it was a project I wanted to work on, or it could be the head of marketing, or it could be someone working with a translator who feels like they need more pages translated on the blog or something like that. And they'll create we call it a do proposal, but it's essentially a brief. And then we'll share that with the whole team. So that's kind of how our projects get started. And for us as designer, I would say often it comes from the marketing team. Most of our projects are for them, but we also have other projects, like I'm working on a new contact form for the help center for Todoist. And so that came from the support team, and they put together the proposal and asked for input from our team, of course, while putting together the document. But then, they're leading the project, and I'm part of their team to make it happen.
It all sounds really collaborative, and ideas can come from any level, and everyone's free to, suggest things to work on, which Definitely. I really like the sound of. Yeah. So both of you have agency experience. We were just discussing this before the call. Mm-hmm. Do you kind of feel sometimes like you operate as an internal agency at Doist, because you've got these two different apps, right, that you're marketing with your designs? What's that like? How does that work?
In my experience, it is a completely different experience from working in an agency.
Okay.
I don't know if this is for everyone, but from my background, like the thing I didn't like about the agency style is that the way the structure works is that you're working for someone. You're not like working on the same project. You don't have like the same investment in it. Right. And something that's really wonderful at Doist is like we all are really invested in these two things. So the like commitment and energy that is being put out is the same, and there's an understanding that like everything that we're doing benefits all of us and the products.
That's so true. It feels like we're all on the same team because we literally are, and we have exactly the same objectives. I mean, as an agency, you technically have the objectives of your clients, but sometimes some things are lost in translation. And it's interesting because often as an agency, you're hired as the expert, the brand expert, and you would think the client would kind of view you that way. But in my experience, often we kind of have to work with the client in convincing them that we actually know what we're talking about and this is the right solution. And it's funny, but we don't really have as much convincing to do within our team because they trust us right away, and we all consider each other as the experts in their field, and we can contribute ideas, and they're considered on equal level. And that actually has been a big difference for me from the agency side.
Yeah, I mean, you just have this level of ownership, right, that you could never have at an agency when it's that client-designer relationship. What about, Anais, your comparison to your other experience in tech, where you're working perhaps on just one brand? Because the critique a lot of people often have about in-house design, I hear it all the time, is don't you get bored, working on the same colors, the same fonts all the time? Have you found that having these two different brands, two different apps has helped ease that for you?
Yeah, a little bit. I didn't really get bored in my last job either, though. Even though we had only... we had only one product, but we did like some specific marketing campaigns, and those would have their own branding and their own feel, and then their own story that you could get to craft, and that was not that boring. And with Todoist, it's actually we're just talking about this, but it's more like three brands because we have Todoist, Twist, and Doist as the company. So it's very interesting to think about how they all work together, but they all have their own unique identities. And so far, I'm not bored at all.
That's been interesting about doing the series, talking to lots of in-house marketing designers, and no one has ever mentioned being bored as like a challenge that they face. So I think it's just things that, people who aren't yet in-house designers worry about, but it might be a little unfounded.
Yeah. I think maybe the only thing would be that you don't get as often a sense of starting completely from scratch.
That's so true.
Is good, but also a little bit stressful because you don't know where you're going. But it's also really fun to challenge as a designer, so that you just don't get as many opportunities like that one, but you also get way more opportunities to refine something to the perfection, which is something in agency. You're working on the brand and you hand it off to the client, and then they do whatever they want with it. And then you just hope that things stay okay. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a type, like a personality type, or like a type of working that you like to do. I remember in the interview when I was interviewing for the position, like I talked about that with Anna, our head of design, because she was saying like that's something that you're going to be doing, is you're only going to be working on these like specific things, and is that a problem? And I was like, no, I really like that, because like, yeah, in the agency I experienced that, where like you tend to get such a very service level investment, I guess, in the projects you're working on, because they're all budgeted and the timelines are usually pretty tight. So in my experience, like the thing that I enjoyed the most about my agency work was working on the brand of the agency, because I got to like have that deep like investment in it and be very specific. Anais and I are both very like detail people, and having systems, and so I got to like invest the time in that. So I am actually loving like the limited nature of the work we're doing.
Yeah, it's like they say, right? Constraints breed creativity. And I think in-house design is definitely an example of that.
For sure.
Tell me about your responsibilities as marketing designers at Doist. Like, what are you responsible for?
So, yeah, like Anais was saying before, with the due cycle, it is very dependent on the project. So typically, though, I would say our responsibilities would be like the landing pages for our products, our marketing websites, the help center. There's like the emails that we send out, the marketing emails, any videos or animation, like that type of thing on social media that we put out.
Our brands in general, defining the brand. It's interesting because we came in after they already had a marketing designer, so we inherited a brand, but we also have to evolve it as the company itself is evolving, and so it's its own project. And it's funny because we don't consider it its own due the way any other project is considered, and we kind of do this on the side as we're working on other projects, and we realize that we need to define certain aspects of the brand in order to continue with our projects.
Yeah, that's something that we're working on right now. So with the 3 brands, like right before we started, the company just launched a sort of rebrand of the Todoist app, but it wasn't, and the goal was to have all the Twist and Doist as well, like on that same visual language, but it hadn't gotten to that point. So we're working now on figuring out how that is all going to work together, like the way that the colors work between brands and tying them all together. Yeah, we're putting a lot of energy into that at the moment, and and like documenting it in a way that is understandable for other people at the company. And,
that sounds like a big job.
Yes.
But it's really fun. And we're making progress.
Yeah, and it's a good way for Stephen and I to align ourselves on what the brand is and kind of be on the same page on every aspect of the brand. It's interesting because it was previously just one marketing designer, and so they didn't really have to be as specific about documentation or things like that, because they would just make their own decisions on and remember, details about how do you treat a certain aspect of the website or something like that. And for us, Stephen has been doing a lot of the website pages, and so when I get in there, I'm like, Stephen, can you tell me what decisions you have been making in this area so I can make sure to continue that? And yeah, it's interesting to work that way.
Oh man, okay, that's making, because I'm the solo marketing designer right now at ConvertKit, and that's making me realize that I should probably be documenting a lot more so that, to help out our future selves if we bring someone else on the team. Yep, good note.
I mean, even stuff like typically, you use like this many pixels like between the last section on the page and the footer. Like if I don't write that down somewhere, like I'm just expecting that Anais will realize that that's what I'm doing, like by looking at my previous work, and that's not really fair to her.
And at least the footer is the same on every page, but like for other element, I kind of have to go back and dig through his files so that I can find that out. So we've been documenting it, so I don't have to do that anymore.
Nice. How do you split the work between you two? Like, who decides who works on what project?
It's like back to the due system. So each month we have like a due coordinator, which is, I guess, maybe the equivalent of like a project manager at another company, and they work with our team heads to identify what are the projects that we're going to be working on each month, and just the availability of people to join a team. And it has a lot to do with like what you worked on the last month, because maybe you like have been giving input to the scoping of that project, so it makes sense that you're familiar with the details of it,
right,
that you would work on it. But they also ask us what we want to do and have some
if you're passionate about something, you can say it and you'll probably get to work on it.
Let's talk through a project at Doist. So you've got a project that you're working on. How does it start? How does a project start?
All right, let's go back to the due system.
This is really an interview about the due system.
I know. But it is like, it's a very strong system that really defines how we work at Doist in general. And it's been working really well for me in general. But yeah, so once you have your due proposal, your brief document, that document will include what the team should be in terms of what type of team members we need. Do we need a developer? Do we need a designer? Do we need a copywriter? And then once you've defined that will be worked out with the heads, who can work on this, which designer we can put on this project. And then once you've been assigned to a due, you're part of that squad, as we call it. And then usually the person who created the due proposal is going to be the squad leader and be in charge of project managing pretty much the whole project, and be somewhat responsible for the success of the due. If we can, we do a video chat kickoff. But the video chat is really just intended to kind of get the team chatting with each other, get in sync, but any vital information will be in the documents or discussed in Twist, so that there's a way for anybody to access that information. And then if your time zone is too crazy and you can make the meeting, then you can always go back and look at that information somewhere else. So yeah, we'll start the do that way. And then again, depending on the project, we kind of organize the timeline however the team see fit. And each team member or squad member will define what they're going to work on first. And we actually share our progress every week. And we say, last week I worked on this, and next week I'm planning to work on that. And we continue to evolve things that way.
Nice. And Stephen, how about you take us through some of the, like, your design process? Like, what tools do you use as part of that? Do you both use the same tools? Maybe I should be asking both of you this question. I don't know.
Yes, this is
Stephen, you can answer that one.
Yeah, God. So this is something that we are working on right now. So our product teams use Sketch, and the marketing team is using Figma right now for our design mockups. It's proving to not be the best system, having the separate workflows like that, because in a lot of ways our work is linked, especially from the marketing side, like needing mockups of the product and having them not in the same tool it's not a terrible experience, but it's certainly not a streamlined one. So we are actively working on figuring out how to move forward as a full team. The reason we really have liked Figma for the marketing stuff is the collaboration features. Both for being NIE, we really like to pair design and work on problems together when possible. But also we've built a workflow using some of its features to allow the copywriters to work directly in the file when they're writing. And this has proven to be really helpful for us as a team, because I think there's always this struggle of you can't design until you have the words, but it's the word or the wording can benefit from having some design constraints.
Yeah, it's like a chicken or egg situation, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Much
So what we've done, and this has been, we've tested it a few times just between one designer and one copywriter, is we work on, during the first cycle, the first month of the due, a general structure for the page that we're working on or the website, what the information is that we're trying to communicate, what the goals are, but no specific words, like there will be a heading here, there will be a subheading here. Then the designer will like take that rough outline and start designing, just like taking ideas like, okay, so we're definitely gonna need a section here about this information. Just kind of some loose mock-ups. Either I will like try my hand at doing the copywriting, or like just write some funny notes to leave for the copywriter. And then once I get maybe the first week, I'll spend just exploring ideas. And then the copywriter will come into Figma and start working directly in the file there. And we just use the comments to like, hey, I need an extra line here. Like, I need this text object to be smaller. And yeah, it's a very collaborative and fluid process.
I love that.
A final project.
This is something that I've just
awesome.
like, I've only done on one project so far with the copywriter that I work with. And it was just like, why have I not thought to do this before? You know, like, I think it was that I switched from Sketch to Figma, but I didn't really change up my design process a whole lot in moving across tools. It just meant that I could access things that everyone else was accessing. And I just never thought about the fact that now it's easy for non-designers to get in there and edit the file as well. So yeah, love hearing that that's working for you, and that gives me the confidence that I need to like keep working on that with my copywriter for sure. How does feedback loops work throughout a project for you? It sounds like you and Anais, Stephen, are sharing pretty regularly, you know, what each other's doing. Do you have stages within a project where you like formally present work, I suppose, for feedback or anything like that?
Not usually. Another like thing that we do is this concept of like a directly responsible doister, DRD. And what that kind of means, or the idea behind that, is like Anais was saying before, we trust each other to be the expert of what we're working on. And it's ultimately the DRD's final say. So, you know, it's up to you to who you want feedback from. It's up to you to how you take that feedback. For the most part, like, for instance, I'm working on the redesign of the Doist website, and like we wanted to get specific feedback from our like CXO folks to just make sure like we're on the right track. But you know, we're not the type of company where like the CEO, what he says goes.
Right.
Like, that type of environment.
Yeah. So does that mean that is the DRD the same person as the do?
So
what was the word you used?
The squad leader?
The squad leader, yeah, that one. Is the squad leader and the DRD the same, or not always?
My understanding of it is like directly responsible doer is like just your piece of the do.
Okay.
You're responsible for that.
Yeah.
And the squad leader is sort of just like the keeping everyone on track towards the timeline and the goals and organizing communication.
Yeah, it's very unique at Doist. Everybody is super self-reliant and responsible for their own side of things. It's really a pleasure to work with that people like that, because they're not second guessing your decisions, and then when they contribute a question or a suggestion, it's always very thoughtful and actually helpful towards making your design better. It's for me, I'm a very collaborative designer. Even at the agency, I would tend to share my work with other designers more than other designers would. But yeah, I tend to share with the design team in general, say, hey, this is what I came up with here. Like, feel free to look at it, give comment whenever. And then with the squad, I also will share on a regular basis to make sure that everybody knows what the progress is on the design side. And it works for me. And then with Steven, I just share even more often. So
it sounds like everything's pretty asynchronous, obviously, at Doist. Yeah. So there's not like a weekly design crit or something where, you know, you're like, this is what I'm working on to the design team.
No, but we were trying to implement something like that. With the design review, we wanted to do something. It was more informative to kind of share what everybody's doing and less to receive feedback. But we're trying to do something like that. Yeah. Yeah,
that makes sense.
So the way we do things now is because our time zones are so disparate. Like, we have one of our illustrators, Yin, is in Taiwan, and Anais is in Denver. So like there's no overlap whatsoever. So we can't really do like full team meetings unless Yin wants to stay up really late.
Right.
So what we do each Monday is we each like write down sort of what we worked on last week, what we're going to be working on this week, anything that's blocking us. And we do some synchronous meetings on Monday as well, but it's split up. So it's me, Anais, and it's like the Western Hemisphere people and the Eastern Hemisphere. But we record those meetings so we can like listen in on what is happening.
Yeah, I love that.
But there's no like everyone get together and talk about the work.
What about when a project's over? How do you measure the success of it at Doist?
Well, every project has different success metrics, but in Doist is not really data driven. It's more data informed. So we take that in consideration, but we don't make all our decisions that way. And some of my projects, like I've refreshed a lot of our marketing emails. And so those had more specific goals in terms of increasing click rate and things like that. I'm still curious to see how much we're going to stick to those numbers, but the project's still going on, so it's kind of hard to tell. But for something like the contact form that I'm working on with the Help Center right now, the main metric is going to be, well, if we get less contact tickets that people could have answered themselves by using the Help Center, then that would be a successful site. And I think also making sure we don't alienate our users through the process is important, but that's also harder to measure. So we always listen to our users a lot and their feedback, and so I think that we'll get some of that way.
Yeah, it's very hard. I'm actually really curious to find out how other people do this from watching this series, but like it's very hard to track or like definitively say this is the effect of design on the success of something, because it's very subjective and there's so many other factors. Like for instance, Twist is our team communication tool and it's really focused on remote work and asynchronous communication. But like in addition to launching a new web page that we were working on, like the coronavirus happened and lots of companies immediately started going remote. So it's like, how do we say what was the cause of what?
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. Do you do any sort of like A/B testing, like testing different designs against each other? Any of that sort of thing yet?
We have not done as much of that. I would like to do more actually, but sometimes you have to plan ahead for being able to do some A/B testing, and some of the project we've done, we just haven't been able to do so. But in the future, I would like to think more about that.
Yeah. It sounds to me like Doist has a really strong focus on being like a brand-driven company, right? Like just in terms of even the investment of like having 2 illustrators on the team of 75, that's an investment that a lot of tech companies haven't made, Yes, that was such a big deal when I applied for the job because of that, actually. Yeah, so that makes sense, and probably is why the data is less of a focus, because a brand is, nearly impossible to measure in terms of numbers, and you only really know that it's working as a whole, essentially. What about your performance as designers? Now, since you've only been here 6 months, I don't know if like maybe you haven't had a performance review or something like that, but how do you know if you're doing a good job? Do you have regular meetings with your manager? Where does that come from?
Yeah, we do have one-on-ones with our head of design on a monthly basis. Yeah, when you start at Doist, you have a 3-month trial period, and you have a one-on-one with a mentor on a weekly basis, so you can kind of get a better sense of what's going on, and also you can get a little bit of that feedback early on. But after that, it's usually more about like the head asking me, what can I do for you? What questions do you have? What do you need to move forward? And it's much less about like, I'm going to tell you how you're doing. Yeah. Which is also a relationship that I think is kind of unique at most companies, and is very valuable. And I really like to work that way. I don't need as much feedback on a regular basis, but performance reviews have their use in more of a career building perspective. Right now, we don't really have a system in place for that, but actually our Doist is working on that right now and working on a career path system. Cool. And I think those will include something more like a performance review, where you can kind of talk about your current role and what you want your future role to be, and what you should be doing to achieve that.
Great. So it sounds like the company is investing in you and like making sure that your careers are going where you want them to. What are some of the main challenges you face in your role? Maybe there was a lot at the start, because it's always hard to start a new job, but how about now? What are the main challenges you're facing?
I think the biggest challenge is communication. Just like because of the remote environment and the time zones, you have to be very intentional and thoughtful about the way you're communicating. And when not everyone recognizes that or has time to focus on communication as a priority, it can strain the progress of a project because I'm working on this, I need your feedback, and you can't get back to me for 3 days because of the time zones and things. It can just really slow things down. We're all as a company, I think, working on better ways to communicate and document information and just keep things organized. So that's definitely the biggest one for me as an individual as well, working on how to communicate better. For instance, yesterday I had my first ever in-person video conversation with one of our illustrators. We've worked together on multiple projects and I've given him feedback and he's shared, work with me, and I've made a lot of requests from him, but we've never had a personal interaction like
wow.
that. So that's not, I think that's understood that that's okay and that there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I really like being able to have a sort of that personal connection. It makes me feel better about the things I'm asking of you, that I'm not demanding stuff from you, or we have a relationship as humans. And
it gives you a better sense of how they might react on the other side if you met them.
Yeah, when it's all written, it's
it's hard to understand tone if you have never heard someone talk,
exactly.
as well. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I would say also communication. Although I would say that I feel like communication is a kind of a cliche challenge of a remote team, and I think we do a really good job with communication. It's just that communication is always a challenge, no matter the setting. But for me, it's been where I'm working on the project and I want to make sure that I get to a good ending point at the end of the day so I can share with the rest of my squad, especially on my current project, because the rest of the squad is either in Asia or in Europe. And so by the time I go to bed, they're going to wake up and they're going to start working on things. And if I didn't share anything, they might sit a whole day without doing anything based on my designs because I didn't share it. And so I want to make sure that they have enough to work on while I'm asleep.
Another thing that is a important or unique thing about how we do marketing design also is this concept of a design hero, which is a role that we cycle through each month. One of the designers, product designers as well, doesn't work on a feature do or a marketing do, but they're the design hero, which means that they sort of fill in the gaps, the little things that need to get done, whether it's little bug fixes and UI tweaks or the social media graphics, that kind of thing is something that the hero does. So that's my role at this month right now, and it's been challenging to balance sort of the one-off little requests that come in from the hero, the brand stuff, which we're working on through the hero right now, and then also you're kind of working a little bit on your previous do stuff that didn't get finished, or implementing, in this case I did the design, but now the illustration's being worked on, so I need to incorporate that and share that with the developer. Then I'm giving input on my next do and the scoping for that. So balancing those priorities is, I think, or for me at least, it's a challenge
that sort of sounds like the design version of being, engineers being on call for a week for if the app goes down on the weekend or something like that. It's you have to fill in all the stuff that, let's be honest, no one really loves making social media images, but it's a thing that has to get done. And so the hero is the one who, steps in and does it. I like that way of splitting it up. That's cool.
I think that it might have been inspired by how the dev teams do it, because they also have their own hero. But yeah, I like it. It's funny. You'd think that would be the easier do that you have to do because it's just one-offs. But Steven and I take things too seriously. And so when I did my hero, my design hero do, I ended up rethinking the whole guidelines around how we do our social images and really go in depth into what are the styles that we use, what are the different typefaces, how do we what are the different colors, and then now that Steven is the design hero, he's taking that on to a deeper level, and how should we consider the colors for Doist versus the colors for Todoist and Twist. And so we ended up using that too as a bigger marketing design thinking, I guess.
It's really important for the reason is that those are brand applications that are being created by non-marketing designers.
Also,
like next month, it's not going to be one of us who's the hero. So we need to like establish those styles and document them in a way that is understandable for the other people that work on it. So they have the autonomy to create those, whatever it is, with confidence that like it's going to be consistent with like the standards that we put in place.
Is there anything else that I don't know, that like I never would have thought to ask about that, because I've never heard of that happening before with the design team? Is there any other cool little things to do with design at Doist that you want to share?
Well, this is not like a formal thing, but something that is allowed here, which I love, is that Anais and I both like write code and like submit pull requests for the projects that we're working on.
Mostly Steven. I understand somewhat of the code and I tweak it. That's what
nice.
I love like writing code and using it as a design medium, but like feeling like, you know, my role is a designer, so like that's not going to be my part. I'm not going to have a say in that. But like one of our marketing developers reached out to me and was like, it seems like you know what you're talking about. Like, would you like to write code? Like, instead of like telling me that this should be 1 rem of spacing, would you like to just do it yourself and send that to me? And I was like, I would love that. So that sort of like flexibility is really amazing.
Yeah, because as a designer, I'm sure you know, when the developers have built the website and you're like, it's great, but there's all these little things that were not exactly as in my mockup, and it looks okay, but it would look so much better if, you know, the spacing was just a little bigger. I know for me, I've always had like a sense of guilt asking them for all these little very nitpicky details, and they have to go back. And so I think that solution where we can just go and do that ourselves is making it so much easier on them, and less of a guilt trip for me.
Yeah, I think that's just a really good skill in general for designers to learn, because it's kind of like learning the language that your design will be communicated in, you know? And if you can speak, even if you don't code yourself, even if you can speak the same language to the developer and be able to say 1 rem of space, you know, and know what that means, that's my hot take on the matter. Let's end by talking about your favorite parts of your job. I feel like we've touched on a lot in this episode of things you love about your job as marketing designers at Doist, but any one thing in particular else you want to call out before we end?
So for me, design is finding visual solutions to various communication problems, or sometimes bigger business problems or user experience problems. And so I really like to think about what's the best solution. And often, Stephen touched on that a little bit, in agencies, you don't have a lot of time to think about these things or question the way we're doing things if there's a better way to do it. And so at Doist, because everything is so open, communication is so transparent, and everybody's so collaborative, as a designer, you have a lot more leverage and a lot more opportunities to share your opinions, share your ideas, propose something completely different that nobody had thought of, and that those ideas will actually be considered. And if it's a good idea, we'll actually work on it and build it. One example was we have these getting started guides that we do on the help center, and I found that they were a little like difficult to go through and not really a great introduction to how our product works and how simple it is. And I just wanted to think of a better solution, so I just went ahead and did some wireframe just to kind of explore that idea, and then shared it with the team. And the team was like, "Oh yeah, we should definitely do something like that and think about it." And because I shared that, now we're thinking about that project differently, and we're going to make it more of a design exploration that we originally thought we would. So that's maybe my favorite part.
I love that. So the company gives you the autonomy to suggest ideas like that, and empowers you to make them happen. Cool.
Exactly.
Stephen, what about you?
The same. But so something that actually, when we were like working on preparing for this interview, like Anais wrote like good design is a priority at the company. And yeah, I like that's definitely true that we're like a design led. I don't know if this is like a formal thing that we claim, but like it's definitely true in our practice that both in the product and the marketing stuff, that like we understand the value of design and how that affects our goals and the way people interact with what we're creating.
Yeah, this is something that is such a difference between even working in other in-house environments, where I feel like design team usually tend to clash with the marketing team because they seem to have different objectives, and the marketing team just wants a big button because it's gonna be obvious, and the design team wants a tiny button because it's so much more elegant. And like we don't really have these conversations. Like as designers, we understand that things need to be easy to see and easy to click and also accessible and all that stuff, and so the marketing doesn't have to tell us to make things bigger.
Right, like you can spend your energy on other problems, like bigger, more important problems than like internally having these debates or having to fight for your like practice to be valid. I love that.
Yeah,
cool.
Exactly.
Big battles like what design tool we use.
Yeah. Sketchfest big battle. I will definitely be following up to see how that one ends because I'm very curious, and I'm sure that our listeners will be as well. Thank you for being on the show, you two. I've really enjoyed hearing how things work, and definitely picked up some things I think that I want to bring in and apply to my work, as even though I am a solo design team. Do you want to tell the people where they can follow you online or keep up with your work? Anything to pitch?
I don't know. I'm not really good at that stuff.
Try Twist.
Okay. That's all you want to pitch. Great.
Yes, I love that.
Okay. How about I will then put links to some social media for you in the description. People can follow, check out your work there. And, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much,
Charlie, for having us.
I hope you enjoyed listening to that conversation. This one was a really interesting one for me because it sounds like Doist really has this remote work thing nailed. All of the asynchronous communication, the team structure and organization, the way they do things with their do objectives and their design hero. They've got a lot of systems in place, but the systems all sound like they really free the designers up to focus on the important things and get the work done. So a huge thank you to Stephen and Anais for sharing all that with us. And thank you to you as well for listening to this show. If you enjoyed the episode, I would really love if you would take the time to go on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. This show, as I say every week, is available in both video and audio format. Videos can be found on my YouTube channel, Charlie Marie TV, and the audio, the podcast, can be found in whatever podcasting app you use. Open it up, search for Inside Marketing Design, or head on over to insidemarketingdesign.co and you will find links to the major podcast players there. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you again next week for another look inside marketing design at a different tech company.